Back here in Washington in our studio at the Jones Day Law Firm, we're now joined by Beverly Daniel Tatum, who's the president of Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as Reverend Jesse Jackson. So nice to have you both here today. Thank you so much for coming by. Let me start with you, if I could, Dr. Tatum. Tell me, I know that Ben Tracy and his friends didn't exactly have a front row seat to this inauguration, but you almost did. You were right up there, weren't you?
Well, I'm very happy to say that I had a seat, and I was there with one of our trustees from Spelman College and some friends, and it was very exciting
to
be there.
Tell me about the students at Spelman. I mean, I'm sure this has been a momentous event for them to have a African-American president for students in an all-black university.
Absolutely. There's been tremendous excitement about the candidacy. We had almost 96% of our students registered to vote, very high student turnout, a lot of activism, campaigning actively for Barack Obama, and certainly tremendous excitement on the night of the election. And indeed, we have a group of students here in Washington, D.C., among the 2 million participating in the inauguration.
You've written about what you call the resegregation of schools in America. What do you mean by that?
Just that in fact our schools today, 40 years, are more segregated than they were 40 years ago, largely because of, not because of legalized segregation, of course, today, but because residential segregation persists, and our schooling patterns and policies have moved away from transporting kids across busing lines, across district lines, to be in neighborhood schools, and since the neighborhoods are segregated, the schools have returned to segregation.
And so what's the solution to that de facto segregation?
Well, I think that Barack Obama, when he talks about creating excellent school opportunities for all children, really speaks to the heart of the matter. It's not so much who's sitting next to who, but who has access to quality education. And that is probably the most important issue. So I think certainly throughout my career I've talked about the benefit of children growing up in environments where they have the opportunity to get to know people different from themselves, and the value of that, particularly in the 21st century as we look at our nation and how we move forward together.
And we've seen that in Barack Obama, in fact, the many cultural influences that he experienced and really the diverse background that he enjoyed and really helped him later in his life. Reverend Jesse Jackson, I mean, it was so moving to see you on election night with tears streaming down your face. And
I'm really proud today, but they would have frozen. So my heart bled right to my face crying.
Tell me how you felt as you watched him take the oath of office.
It was a spiritual high moment, you know. Dr. King, the prophet, honored yesterday. Barack, the president, being inaugurated today, and it was the dynamic between the prophetic role and litigation, legislation, demonstration, and even martyrdom led to this moment. So that led to a kind of spiritual high. But while it is high noon in our politics, it's midnight in our economy. And the middle class is sinking, the poverty base is expanding. I hope, for example, when he goes back to the office today, you know, we had the engagement in Chicago, November the 4th, the wedding today, and now the marriage begins. And this will be a very challenging marriage, as he reminded us today. Marriage
is hard work, right?
And I would hope, for example, with Dr. Tatum here, we're bailing out banks with 1% interest money. Suppose we set 1% interest for student loans. That alone would, in fact, revive schools and students and parents. That would be watering the roots, not just the leaves. It's that kind of economic creativity that must, in fact, begin to give us some immediate impact of this presidency.
So is education the key in terms of the way we move this forward and continue the progress?
Look at his education and look at Michelle's education, Dr. King's education. Education matters, but we won the lawsuit against race disparity in '54. We lost the funding suit, the Rodriguez case, and so unequal funding is legal. So you go to schools where they are industrial and salary basis, you get first class education, in the city you get second class, and the result is you have, for all too often, first class jails and second class schools. Many poor youth, if they go to school, they get 5 meals a week. Go to jail, they get 21 meals a week. For them, jail becomes a hotel, a homeless shelter. The abounding shameful poverty must be a part of the targeted use of the stimulus package.
And that's what Dr. King really preached.
His very last staff meeting on January 15, 1968 was how to end poverty at home and end war abroad. And I think we now have a president who realizes we are in economic distress, And war, some of our wars are self-induced pain. He needs us to rally with him, and we shall, to bring about eradicating poverty as we know it, begin to deal with these tensions in not just Afghanistan and the Middle East, but Zimbabwe. More folk have died from cholera in Zimbabwe than from the Gaza, for example. And then there's Haiti 90 miles from Miami with people eating mud pies, a staple crop. So he's going to need lots of help. It is his broad vision, his sense of hope and redemption that gives him, I think, an edge in being able to tackle these problems.
Beverly Tatum, if you could ask him to do one thing in the first 100 days where his political capital is at its highest, what would that be?
Expand access to college. I really would. As a college president, I see students struggling in this economic downturn to stay in school. Kids who have done the things that we've asked them to do, prepared themselves to advance themselves for education, move on to leadership positions, and not being able to continue. And so I know that part of that economic recovery is to expand student loan opportunities, to expand Pell Grant, increase the Pell Grant so that students can stay in school. And particularly as we look at the role, and I will be a little partisan here, but particularly as we look at the role of historically black colleges and universities that they have played in preparing the black middle class and to create doors of opportunity. Certainly we don't want to forget them as we continue to look at ways that we can expand opportunity across the educational spectrum.
But kid, I would like, you lose 3 million jobs in 1 year for the Smith College or Spelman. If we were to set aside some money for 1% interest loans to students, it would establish students and parents and the jobless, it would increase productivity, it would give us something to begin to save colleges and give those who are poor a chance to go to college for the first time.
Absolutely.
But it all begins with the economy.
Absolutely.
It all begins with the economy, and I think that's why the first meetings that Barack Obama is going to have tomorrow, when he goes to work, day one at the White House, he'll meet with his economic team in the morning, I'm told, then he'll meet with the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the afternoon.
But the stimulus must be targeted enough
got to get
those to the base to really matter.
To a point where their kids can go to school.
No
and then
question.
Right.
we have an obligation to give every kid as much education as he can take.
And he has to
as
put a
much
big
as he
chunk
wants.
aside for that stimulus package to invest in things like education, science, technology, and infrastructure, and hopefully that will be a first step.
The bank gets 1% money in these bailouts. So why does the student have to get 7 to 20% money to stay in school? That's why we keep pushing some kind of Education Investment Act, probably the first stimulus package.
All right. Well, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Beverly Daniel Tatum from Spelman College, thank you both so much for coming by. We appreciate it.
What a great day.
Oh, it's really been such an inspiration, and thank you for having us.
And we'll be back because the parade is about to begin here in the nation's capital after these messages.